Welcome back to the Ambassadors Podcast. This is episode 31, I believe, and we have a special guest. My little brother, Joey Petrovic. Hi, Joey. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for asking.
Joey, turn up your volume on your mic. I can't hear you.
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Now I can hear you.
There you go.
My bad.
Good.
Thank you.
Joey, you've never really been a part of the Ambassadors before, have you? Like, you never did any of the stuff that Joshua did with us, or were you part?
I think I did.
Did you ever do anything?
Like 2 things that I can remember, but that's it.
Were you in the fishing competition?
Nope.
All right. Yeah. Well, welcome to the Ambassadors Podcast, your debut.
Thank you.
Joey is my little brother by 4 years. So you're what, 21?
21.
21. Wonderful. Wonderful. Justin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank God. I keep sleeping through my alarms, so I think I need to stop going to bed so late. But other than that, I'm doing fantastic.
I thought you were on a good schedule where like everything was back to normal and you were sleeping.
I was until this past weekend. I don't even remember what I was doing, but I stayed up till like 2 a.m, and it's been a battle to get it back this week. But I finally got it back, I think. So we're good.
There you go. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Today's podcast, we want to talk about seasons, specifically winter. I want to talk a little bit about the outdoors, like as we always do, but in relation to winter, because it is winter right now, and we finally in Colorado got some winter weather. It's not normal. It's usually colder. I mean, I remember years where we got snow in October, but this year, like, I think we had one snowstorm like a month ago, but besides that, like, it melts the next day. We finally have gotten like some colder weather. It's been like in the 50s, between like the 50s and 60s for the past like 2 months, and all of a sudden, finally, we got some cold weather, which I love. I love the cold weather. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I want to talk a little bit about the outdoors as far as winter goes, that time of season, and just waiting on God's timing and seasons in general. So, Justin, are you a winter guy? Are you a cold guy? Do you appreciate it, or are you like, I could live my whole life without it and be happy?
To me, it kind of depends. If I'm able to go do something outside and it's cold, but I have a goal in mind, or I'm going to spend time with people or something like that, then I enjoy it. But if it's just cold and it's miserable just throughout my day, then I hate it. I hate it so much. But if you have something cool planned, like you go out to the hot springs with some friends, or you're going snowboarding or something like that, then it's awesome. I love it, as long as there's snow. But this whole thing where it's just freezing and the wind just like makes it -10 degrees and it's just miserable, I'm not a huge fan of that.
Yeah. It's not that cold. Like, it's been in like the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
It
I
hit
know
when
what
I went
you're
to
saying.
school. It hit like 3 degrees, felt like -12, so that wasn't fun. Walking
Yeah,
a
there's-
mile to class.
There was
Yeah,
one day where it's like that. What about you, Joey? Winter and winter outdoor stuff, and what do you think about the cold? Do you hate it? Do you wish it didn't exist, or do you like it, or what do you like about the coldness?
I like outdoors wise, I like the cold because it normally means there's no bugs. You're not going to be walking through any spider webs, anything like that. But I like the cold. I don't like, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. If it's in the morning, not huge on the cold, which is when it's the coldest. But throughout the day, I don't mind it being cold. Not too much. It sucks sometimes at work, but other than that.
Are there any things you do that have to do with the outdoors in the cold?
I mean, the normal
plays
things
video
you do
games
outside.
in the cold.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Open up the
But
window.
it's in our basement right now.
It's
Well,
nice
that's
to
good.
work out
Okay,
in the
so-
cold. Yeah.
Yeah, you can work out in the cold. There's lots of things you can do in the cold that it makes it refreshing. I know for me, I love the cold for many reasons, but one of them is at least in Colorado, we don't really have any humidity here, so it's like a dry coldness, and it actually, especially because we live in the mountains, like it freshens up the mountain air, the higher elevation. Like for me, especially if you're camping, like doing winter camping, and you breathe in that cold air, it feels like you're drinking water, like a glass of cool water. It's really refreshing. It's just a very, very comforting feeling that I always look forward to every winter. That as much as I enjoy the summer, it's just it's not as refreshing in my opinion as a winter. Um, let's see. We have one person. We have our good friend Joe from Florida saying nothing is as cold as Florida cold. 35 here feels like zero. Yes. So I led the Florida Sing one year, and it was one of the coldest years we've had in Colorado. It was like in the negatives. In Denver, when I flew up from Denver, it was like -3. It was really cold. My flight almost got canceled. I fly out from Denver. This is like 3 years ago. I land in Florida, and it was like Joe was saying, it was in the 30s. It was like 80% humidity, and it was really windy. And I'm telling you, I luckily brought like a puff, one of those like really puff, like wind resistant jackets. I was colder in Florida than I was in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
This was like December. It was Christmas because they had the Florida thing during Christmas a few years ago. It was really freezing. I was really surprised. I was kind of upset because like I'm going to Florida and it's colder here than it was in the negatives in Colorado. But no, but as far as the cold goes in Colorado, it's not the same because there's not really humidity. So it doesn't like when you add humidity to the cold, it like penetrates your clothes and goes like straight to your bone. It's like a bone chilling cold that almost aches, which I experienced that with my older brother. He got married in Canada and he got married in January. And oh my goodness, like it was because there's a lot of humidity up there. It was one of the coldest I've ever experienced. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
me too.
I love the refreshness of the cold. One thing I love too about when it comes to the outdoors. So there's a lot of different activities we do. Like Justin is a skier or snowboarder. He does that. I don't do that as much, but I've done some winter camping, not as much as I'd like. But I mean, whatever it is, hiking, even going in the winter, just get the right boots and stuff like that, or just spending time making a bonfire with your friends around the snow and the outdoors. One of my favorite things about the winter is the peacefulness. It's so quiet. When it gets cold like that, like and you're in the woods, everything is just quiet. There's not animals are either hibernating. Sometimes you hear birds, but usually not. And there's just such a peace. If the wind picks up, it can howl a little bit, but usually it's not. Like it's so quiet and peaceful, and it's just like you can sit there and the air is fresh. And I mean, one thing I love about the cold is that, I mean, I struggle with the heat and during summer because it's really hard to cool down. It's really hard to cool down, especially if you're working out in the sun like I do a lot and you're doing physical labor. You like heat up, you got to go chug water. You need to like, it's really hard to de escalate if you get to a point where like you're very, very hot, especially like for me, I work in attics, like it's a sauna up there. Whereas with the cold, all you got to do is just buy the right clothes and just have the right layers, and you're comfortable and you can be warm in the cold if you're wearing the right stuff. Um, and you could still get the benefits of the cold and appreciating it. Another thing Justin said is hot springs. Oh, I love like in Colorado, it's not like a hot springs where you like some places are like this, but it's not like a hot springs where you go and you're in this building at like the YMCA and you're sitting in this hot tub. Like we go to like natural springs oftentimes where you're sitting like in a pool that's made of like natural rocks, or you're laying in a river while it's like freezing outside, but it's like warm water, or actually like hot water where it's almost too hot to even sit in. Like you can only sit in there for so long. That's how hot it burns you sometimes. And it's just there's nothing like that being in God's nature, looking around at like his complete beauty, having like the fresh, cool air in your lungs, but then also like the peaceful quietness of everything around you and being warm in the hot spring. So, um, I don't know, Justin, have you ever done like winter camping or hammocking? Or I mean, you don't really do hammocking because you need something more insulated. But what have you done like as far as winter outdoorsmanship?
Yeah, I was trying to think of this before coming on, but I've never really had the gear for more specifically for winter stuff. So I haven't really done winter camping, definitely not winter hammocking because you need a very special setup for that. And I've never done anything like snowshoeing or going way back doing backpacking in the snow or in winter. But I've done a little bit of hiking. I think I hiked a 14er with Glenn one time going up. There was still a bunch of snow everywhere. So that was really cool. That was an interesting experience. And then I do snowboarding and then also snowmobiling and then going up to the mountains just for random weekend trips or whatever it is. So I go up in the mountains and I go out in nature when it's cold and snowy outside, but nothing super dedicated to actually surviving out there for a few days, like you would with backpacking or camping.
It's kind of strange when you think about it too, with like, because what you're saying, I mean, it's a lot harder. Like you need more expensive equipment. The more insulated equipment's going to be equipment's going to be more expensive. But there's something to think about when you think about winter. The picture of winter throughout all of history has always been negative. And we live in very comfortable times where a winter can be a very positive thing. But you think about like throughout the Middle Ages, it was like a time of famine, and like a third or a quarter of the village died from sickness, diseases. Like winter, it's part of the reasons why so many cultures have holidays surrounding the winter, because it's such a depressing time. I mean, there's literally such a thing called seasonal depression where people feel this, especially in places like Ohio, where like you have so much like so many like clouds in the darkness, you don't see the sun as much. We're really blessed in Colorado where we see the sun like all the time, even in winter, like it's always sunny, um,
Mhm.
even when it's cold. But like for a lot of places around the world, it's not like that. It gets really cold. You don't see the sun that much. Crops die. You're basically going off of whatever you were able to provide during the harvest, and people around you are dying. That was very common throughout history. Sickness is rampant. The days are a lot shorter, so it's dark a lot of the time. And so a lot of these holidays, like Christmas or whatever holidays that were created, even pagan holidays, they they often have a very warm feeling about them. Like you can see like the colors and the meals and the prep, like they are always warmer kind of orientated, and they're very joyful. They're singing, and it was a way that like these festivals, people would like. It was a way villages and communities would get through dark times in the winter. So, with that being said, there's a spiritual analogy to here that I kind of see when I think of the winter, um, which is the seasons of life, right? So I don't know, Joey, before I keep going, do you have any thoughts about anything we've said so far? Go ahead.
I think I had a few, but I think I forgot what I was going to say. I'm not going to lie, but that's okay. It was something back when you were talking about the sunshine. I think all I was going to say is it's about Colorado is that's the nicest part. That's why I kind of like it cold out here. It's because you can almost choose if you want to be cold or hot, whether you're in the shade or in the sun. It's like an on and off switch. Same thing in the summer. If you want to be cool, it's not like Ohio where you go inside and you're still sweating for the next 2 hours, right? In Colorado, you go inside, you cool off right away, or you can warm up real quick. So it's
I like
nice.
how we're just dogging on Ohio. No, but Joey, what Joey's saying is true. Like the sun is very intense here. I've heard it said somewhere that the sun is 40% hotter because we're closer to it because of elevation. I don't know how true that is. But what I do know is what, Joey?
I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure we're not. I just heard that get debunked. That's all I want to say because we're
Okay, yeah,
farther from the
maybe it's incorrect, but it's
equator. My
shining.
bad.
It's shining all the
Immediately
time.
fact checked.
Immediately
Immediately.
fact check. That's why
my
I have
bad.
Joey on here. But what I have noticed is, like Joey was saying, is it is kind of like an off and on switch. There's times I'm driving home from work and the thermometer in my car says it's like 20, 30 degrees outside, but it feels like it's like 60 or 70 because the sun is hitting me through the windshield. And
Mhm.
I'm like starting to sweat. I have to like take off my layers of clothes. I mean, the second you step outside and the wind hits you, you get cold real quick. But um, no, anyways, and this isn't podcast isn't just to glorify Colorado. This is just where we were all born and raised, and so for us, this is our experience with like what the winter is like for us. It's different in other places, but no, there's something to be said though about the seasons, and it's a real thing. That is a darker time of year, and I think if we can try to put ourselves in the shoes of people throughout most of history, and there's even people today who still get very heavy seasonal depression because again, the days are shorter, right? You wake up, it's dark outside, you go to work, and you drive home in the dark almost sometimes. That's what it feels like. And that can be depressing unless you enjoy the dark. I really enjoy the dark, but some people that really bogs them down and brings them down. Um, talk a little bit, maybe either Justin or Joey, if you guys have any thoughts off the top of your mind about different seasons and life, and maybe just the season of winter, um, with both maybe the physical and the spiritual, and kind of the similarities you see between a spiritual winter and a physical winter, or the other seasons in general.
What do you think, Joey?
Sorry. I think. Sorry, someone's calling me over and over again, so I'm trying to ignore them. Um,
Just turn your
in a
phone on. Do not
spiritual
disturb.
sense, well, I was trying to text them in an hour, but I can't even because they keep stinking calling me. What do you call? I mean, if you're thinking, I don't know, when kind of like what you were relating winter to earlier. The thing is, I don't really think about winter as like a depressing time. So it's kind of hard to think about them. I kind of think of winters as like barren and like not fruitful. Everything's kind of dead. So I think of a winter. If you want to go spiritual, I would think like, um, I don't know, maybe a season in your life. I mean, literally a season, right? In your life where, um, maybe not much happens, or maybe it's a trial or a temptation. Maybe you feel cold. You know what I mean? Those kind of things. Whereas the more fruitful seasons would be the warmer, the warmer seasons. I mean, the Bible I think compares it that way for a reason too. When it's talking about, kind of, if you get what I'm saying.
No, yeah, it makes sense. And actually, what you're saying is important too, because you think of things aren't as fruitful in the winter, right? But it doesn't mean, as Christians, from a spiritual perspective, you can't be bearing fruit, but it means you should be ready, right? Like there are different times in our lives, like Ecclesiastes chapter 3, like there's a time to cry, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to rejoice. Um, and it's okay for believers to go through times of sadness and grief, especially if you have a good reason to, right? Um, but no, like even in winter, sometimes those darkest times are where we're brought closest to the Lord. And you can actually, the fruit of the winter that you might be going through in your life might not be evident until later on. So the hard times you're going on right now, you may be asking God, why is this happening to me? And you won't find out till spring, when whatever was fermenting in the ground of your heart or whatever it is. But that's just what you kind of said made me think of Joey. But Justin, what are
Mm.
your thoughts about the original question about seasons of winter and spiritual similarities?
Yeah, so kind of like you identified earlier, I think winter was always cold and gloomy and dark and dangerous and all of these very negative things. And it's, as Joey said, it's kind of hard to relate because growing up, I've always had a warm house, I've always had lights. Just think for a second about, for some of us, maybe not for, well, no, for everybody, except for maybe Uncle Boris or somebody who grew up literally with no electricity, right? But anybody with electricity, you can just walk into the house at any time. Doesn't matter if it's the middle of the day or the middle of the night, and flip on a light switch and just continue on doing what you're doing as if nothing changed. But back before there was widespread electricity, you kind of just went to bed when the sun went down, unless you were rich and you owned candles and you could burn them consistently. But even then, people just they would work when the sun was up and then do whatever chores they had to before bed, and then they would go to bed. And so it kind of paints this picture of this very monotonous, there's very little light during the day. You kind of can just barely get done what you need. And then the rest is darkness and cold and gloom. So for me, that's very hard to relate to. Like obviously, like I said, because I've always had light, and thank God he's always provided me with a warm household or warm clothing or whatever it may be. But I think that's the general sentiment that the authors of the Bible are trying to get across. And then spring is, the opposite, kind of like you already just mentioned, is it's filled with life and joy and happiness and warmth. And there's this growth, this boom of growth that's happening after the long period of nothingness, basically. So that's
Mm.
that's kind of how I understand it in the spiritual sense.
Yeah. And there's lessons to be learned in that winter too. Like we were saying earlier, like it's a dark time, but it can be a peaceful time too. I don't know, like everything becomes quiet, especially if we're talking about a spiritual winter where things are darker and it's colder and it's maybe not the most fruitful time of your life, and there's just maybe stuff you're going through. Like everything else kind of gets drowned out when you're going through something. And you're kind of forced to focus on this one thing that's really in your life that's specifically weighing you down, or this winter or whatever. Or even if sometimes it's not anything in general, but it's just maybe a lack of feeling spiritually connected to the Lord. I find just a peace in the simpleness of knowing that God is in control of all of it. Hold on one sec. Sorry. Justin, are you muted? Oh, you did it to yourself.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did it to myself.
I want to make sure you weren't muted this whole time.
No.
But no, like when you're going through dark times and just like in the wintertime, you can look at it as you can focus on the cold, which is present. You can focus on the dark days or the shorter light that's in your life, or you can appreciate the stillness, the peacefulness, the quietness of all that's around you. Um, and the lesson that you might be learning and all of that, which is easier said than done, but it's what you tell yourself, right? Like shameless plug here because I mean it's our sister podcast, but in the Not Normal podcast last week, I talked about identity. And I talked about what gets us through a lot of the difficulties in our lives is our identity in Christ, and knowing that having a secure foundation in who you are can help you get through dark winters in your life, because even when you're in the cold, you're able to still have peace. I want to talk a little bit about darkness too when I'm talking about like the physical absence of light. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I actually appreciate it. Like there's times where, especially as a kid, when everyone's went to bed, I would just go upstairs and sit on the couch and just sit in the darkness. Like it just felt so peaceful and everything was so quiet and I could just think really clearly. I could hear my own thoughts and it was almost just like I wasn't scared of the darkness. It was almost like a comfort around me. And winter sometimes does that for me too, where I've had times where I've had like the seasonal depression where you're like, man, this is just, especially this one job I had where we were just digging holes. It was like the movie Holes. We were doing the electrical for a huge um car what are they called? Auction place. So it's an auction where they sell cars, but they had this huge like I forgot like how many acres it was, like probably like 15 acres of just empty space of dirt really far east towards Kansas. And it was all dirt where they could park all their cars that they're going to auction, like probably hundreds of them, right? If not thousands. And so we had to do light poles, set up light poles as electricians, right? They need lighting in their car lot. And so we're digging underground. And a lot of it was with the trencher, but then you have to go through and clean it all out and sometimes even dig deeper if something gets backfilled. So, I mean, it was 10-hour days and you get there and it was winter. So the ground was hard and we're just using shovels in our hands. So it's 10-hour days of just, you get there, it's dark, and you're just shoveling, intense labor, like all day, just shoveling like a slave. Um, and then by the time you got done with work and you drove home, it was dark again. And I remember having like a kind of a depression during that time because I was just like, dude, I'm just physically exhausted, and this winter is like hard. The ground is cold. But then once I had finished that job and I've moved on, now it's like, it's not as bad, but I experience the winters a lot more differently and maybe there's something to be said there where what you're going through during a winter and the intensity of it can make it a lot different. But I don't know. That was just kind of one of my thoughts about the darkness. Joey, you were kind of nodding your head when I was talking about darkness. What are your thoughts?
Me, okay, so right now I'm in my basement because where my computer is, and my mom tried to get me to move down here, but literally the main reason I want to stay up in my room upstairs, we have a very nice view of the mountain, but my favorite view of all is in winter when it's covered in snow and dark outside, and you get a little bit of light pollution in the clouds. That is like my favorite thing in the world. It's like I've even thought it sounds almost kind of extreme, but when heaven says, or when the Bible says heaven there will be no more night. It's like, I love nighttime. It's so pretty. I love the stars and the darkness and the moonlight. Like that is my, that sounds cringy. That's like my favorite vibe. You know what I mean? Like just cloudy nighttime, especially thunderstorms. That is my favorite, especially if it's, snowing. That's the coolest. So I get the night thing. I feel super relaxed at night, sleeping with my windows open, in that during that time is like the most relaxing, easiest to fall asleep time ever. So I agree.
Yeah,
Justin.
I really like the nighttime too. I've actually had the exact same thought about how I think it would be cool if you could just go see the galaxy, see the universe with all the stars and everything. Because I really enjoy going out, especially on summer nights or spring nights where it's warm enough to just take some light clothing, maybe a light jacket or whatever, and there's a field kind of, it's maybe a 10-minute walk away from my house, but I'll just go and lay in the field, literally lay I guess it's dirt. We don't have much grass, but I'll go lay in the grass, and there's kind of a little hill, and you can lay back and just stare up into the stars. And when it's a clear night, we don't have too much light pollution where we are. So when it's a clear night and there's no clouds, you can just see hundreds of stars. And I've done that many times just to go think and just to go examine my life or examine what's happening in the world around me. And it's a time of great peace, and I just really enjoy it. So I also think there is something special about the darkness. Obviously, we all need it to go to sleep. So it's interesting that the Bible always frames darkness as being bad and evil. Obviously, there's a reason for that, but I think there's also parts about it in the physical world where it's enjoyable and it's actually good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
especially because, I mean, if you think about the Bible, it was written at a time where there was no electricity or light. So the darkness was literally like something that could change your life
Yeah.
from life to death kind of situations if you didn't know what was going on. Like they
Yeah.
really knew what pitch black was back then. But I
Just
I
imagine
agree.
you
So
have
there's,
to.
huh?
Sorry, I'm just saying back then, all the dangers in the dark, whether it's people,
Yeah.
like whether you're getting jumped by someone or you're an animal or I don't know, walking off a cliff. Literally, it could be like anything. I mean, if you don't have a light and it's pitch black, they don't have light pollution. You can't see a thing. It's like you
Yeah.
need to be home unless you can, like, I don't know, find some light in the distance. So that's
Yeah,
all.
imagine getting sick and it's like pitch black and you have no candle.
I see why
Yeah.
the fear of a dark is a thing. It's definitely
But
fear
that's
response.
actually, so here's something that's interesting to kind of going off what you guys were saying, and maybe I'm reiterating myself a little bit from what I said earlier, but it's like with the darkness, I guess I would put it this way. So the darkness, nighttime and winter, they have like this kind of pairing together, right? They're very similar. They're somewhat of synonyms when it comes to these images that are created, especially throughout stories and fables throughout history and even in scripture, that it's always seen as a negative. But in the negatives of even like the winter time that we experience from a physical perspective, right? During winter, it gets darker, it gets colder. There are these negatives, but like we said earlier, but it becomes more peaceful and everything gets quiet. If you're in the middle of the woods and it's just just fallen snow. There's no animals. They're all either hibernating or they're quiet. And the same way in your spiritual life, things become more quiet and you can become more in tuned to the voice of God. When you're going through suffering a winter in your life, you're able to slow down a little bit because your priorities change and shift a little bit. And you're able to hyper focus on maybe what is it exactly that God is trying to show to you, or maybe a conversation you can have with God that I know for me in those cold winter times when I'm in the mountains or I'm in the woods and it's cold and it's winter and it's dead quiet, it's peaceful and I'm able to actually hear God's voice better as far as sitting down and just having a conversation with him. A lot less distractions. And I think it's similar if you're going through suffering in your life and something that might be considered a a winter season where it's colder and it feels darker and maybe even lonelier, there's beauty in that. That there can be beauty and there can be growth and there can be something that actually carries a weight and a gravity and a depth to it in your moments of loneliness, in your moments of quietness, and even in your moments of suffering, in the moments of winter in your life. Um, because you can experience the same thing physically. There's that analogy there. You're more in tune with God's voice and the distractions are pulled away because your focus is tuned into something rather than just yourself. When you're uncomfortable, it's a lot easier to focus on God and to rely on him rather than the summer days of just it's so easy to forget God when the times are good. I feel like in life in general, we likely are going to have a lot more winter seasons than we will have summers or springs or falls, right? I think we'll have a lot more winters in our life because that's just the human condition. That's just the life we live. That's the consequence of the Garden of Eden. And we can look at them as something to be seasonally depressed about when they come around, or we can look at it as like, hey, if this is going to be the majority of the lot in my life, I should learn how to live. and adapt to this and grow through this. Not that you ever get it perfect and you somehow go through all of your suffering perfectly, but you have a better way of navigating it because it's not so foreign to you. And you can see the beauty in the suffering. You can see the beauty in the cold times and the quiet times and the dark times and the night times, right? And those moments strengthen you and they build your character for when spring does come around and it's time to bear fruit for the kingdom of heaven. And it's time for things to start budding in your life that you didn't even realize God was planting in your heart through those very difficult times in winter. God's planting seeds that blossom later on in life. And the cycle continues. It's not a one and done thing. The process of sanctification. What do you think, guys?
What say you, Joey?
Let's say I agree. I think that's a very good analogy. I think it's more personal to you, but I see it like I've never like super thought about it that way. I definitely agree with the part where you're saying, what do you call, kind of being strengthened through it. I think that's a really good analogy, but other than that, yeah, I agree.
One thing that I think of is the apostles, when they suffered persecution, I guess you would kind of consider that a spiritual winter, is going through persecution for your faith, but they did it and they were rejoicing in the fact that they were being persecuted, right? So they were literally being beat for their faith. I was trying to find the scripture right here, but at one point the Pharisees were literally beating them, and then they commanded the apostles, don't preach Christ anymore. Don't do this. And then the apostles basically said, yeah, okay, sure, buddy. And then they ran out. They ran out of the place that they just got beat, and they were happy. They were rejoicing. For me, that's a very foreign, kind of alien concept. But I think it's one that we should also be able to apply in our lives, whether it is in a good time or it is in a hard time, a bad time. And one thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently is the joy of the Lord, right? What is that? How can you possibly be joyful? It's easy to be joyful in good times, but how can you possibly be joyful in a time that's really hard, or where a lot of things in your life are not going how you want them to? Or there's a bunch of situations, whether it's health or finances or relationships or whatever it may be. How can somebody consistently have the joy of the Lord? And one of the conclusions that I'm coming to is that it's not based on emotion at all. The joy of the Lord has nothing to do with emotion, and it has everything to do with trusting in the Lord, trusting in his promises, and knowing that he's got something in store for you. Whether it's another hard experience where you're going to learn a lot, or maybe it's something that's better, some resolution to one of the problems that you're facing currently. And so to bring that back to winter, even if it is cold outside, even if it is gloomy or dark, or you feel alone, you feel isolated, nobody's around you, we should still be able to think on God and think on the things that he's done for us, to feel grateful for all of the blessings that he's given us, and to continue to fight for our faith, right? The apostle says, I have fought the good fight. I have won the race. I have attained the crown. And that's something we should do, whether it looks like we're on top of the mountain or down in the valley, whether it looks like a beautiful spring day or it's a freezing winter day.
Yeah, there's a Bible verse I want to read that 3 verses that I think actually explain exactly what you're talking about, Justin. In Romans chapter 5, starting at verse 3 to 5, it says, and not only so, but we glory in tribulations also, knowing that tribulation, which is like problems and struggles in our life, it worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given to us. So I read that, and what I see is a picture of someone who is around a campfire. They're in the woods. It's just fresh fallen snow all around them. And they make a fire, and they're sitting by the fire, and they're looking into the fire. And you can hear the crunching of the snow under their feet as they kind of adjust their stance. But they're sitting there and they're gazing into the fire, which is a heat source, but they're still cold all around them. And it's this picture I can see of almost just, there's this uncertainty of how they'll make it through this winter. There's the coldness and the nipping, the biting of the cold on their skin that they can feel that has discomfort to it. But they're looking into this fire, seeing something warmer that is to come, and it's a source that's giving them hope. It's a source that's giving them fuel, and they're able to sit in that cold in peace because they're relying on something that is hope. So in their suffering, they're looking towards something. They're suffering through something that is giving them strength. It builds, and that's what this verse is. It's a building. It says, "Look, when we glory, we have joy in our tribulation. Not that I'm smiling right now that I'm suffering, but I'm having this sense of meaning and deep purpose that comes from my suffering, because these tribulations, these things that I'm going through, they're working something in me. They're building something in me. Every suffering I go through is a building stone for patience. And that patience is a building stone that you can pick up and place on your tower of experience. And then that experience from all of this cycle that you've just gone through ultimately builds a tower of hope. And the Bible calls God like a refuge for hope, that he's our refuge and that we can confide in him and that we can lean on him. And that is ultimately that what all of this comes from, that heat source, that warmth, that light that we look at in our moments of suffering. You have to realize it doesn't last forever. And even if it does last the rest of your life, eternity is forever, not the simple life we have here on earth. We have something deeper. But regardless of that, that's very rare. What will likely happen is that I'm going through a time of cold. I'm going through a time of winter and a suffering where I don't have the answers. But I am asked one thing of the Lord right now. And it's something he's asked me my whole life and will continue to ask me. And it's patience. Even in the good times, but especially in those bad times, wait on the Lord, I say, oh, wait on the Lord. My soul doth wait on the Lord, right? Hope thou in God, for he's the health of my countenance and my God, right? Or the hope of my countenance, which is like the way even just you express yourself to the world. There's something deeper in here. And so to me, this is kind of like a picture of what Ambassadors is all about. Because to the average person, right, like who is not an outdoorsman, didn't grow up in the mountains or going out or experiencing God and spirituality outdoors, like they don't really see it that way. But for us as ambassadors, we're trying to express spiritual concepts through the wilderness and through these wilderness outdoorsmanship disciplines. There are spiritual synonyms or spiritual similarities that you can apply to them that have a deeperness, that kind of how Jesus Christ used parables of like animals and of the outdoor and of the wilderness to the people who were very intimately intertwined with that kind of lifestyle. So that's why I see, like, a lot of times when I'm suffering in my life or I'm going through stuff, I see myself climbing a mountain because I've climbed hundreds of mountains before, just like Justin has, right? And Joey has, right? Like, or if I'm going through a cold winter, I know what it feels like to be outdoors in the middle of nowhere in a cold winter like that. And that's why I see that picture of that man. I see myself sitting there on a log, snow all around me, and a fire pit right in front of me. And I see the comfortabilities and synonyms and the stories. You can look into it deeper, and it gives these spiritual truths that are really kind of, when you think about it, part of the world God created. Like, you can say, Johnny, you're just fishing for these truths, but I look at it a little bit different. I think the spiritual world and the physical world aren't that separate. And I think God created both. I think the physical world was created by God when we're talking about like the outdoors, and we're talking about a fire pit, and we're talking about the snow that's all around me and the cold and the trees and the wilderness, right? I'm not in New York City in a concrete jungle trying to fish for all these things or all these man-made, stone-made things, right? Rather, it's like these things have like, there's real spiritual connections. And I don't doubt things like the Native Americans and other people were tapping into a lot of the spiritual stuff, though via maybe unholy sources. The spiritual world and the outdoors world are very heavily intertwined. Anyone who grew up in it like us, you can't deny it.
Any thoughts, Joey?
For a little bit there, I literally forgot I was a part of the podcast. I just was like, I thought I was watching, but yeah, literally, I was like, oh shoot, I forgot I was even part of this. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I was just kind of listening, but true.
All right.
There's a lot you said, so it's a little hard to build a thought off of all of it, but yeah.
Well, like, okay, what about Joey? How do you feel about like the concept of like, okay, cold winter, you're in a hard time in your life where you don't have answers, you're struggling.
Hmm.
But that verse I read about like God building hope, like what does that make you think about?
Okay, yeah. Actually, yeah, because I did have a thought earlier when Justin was talking, and it just made me think about even with college and high school, and every single time Justin said something about how sorry, the joy of the Lord isn't an emotion, but knowing that He'll take care of you, right? Did I quote that right? So
Hmm.
that's kind of
Yeah.
that's something that has gotten me through like even the idea of choosing what I want to go to college for. I was like, okay, well, clearly, I've been led to go to college for computer science. I believe, and if it's not the right thing, who cares? God will take care of me, and that keeps me happy even when I'm taking a very difficult class that I don't know if I'll pass. And it's like Calc 2 or whatever it is, right? It's like the thing that gets me through pretty much all of it, even work, whatever it might be, is the idea of, that I know that God will take care of me. Like, even if I end up homeless, it's like God will still take care of me. I have nothing to worry about, and I have a reward at the end of all of this. It's like investing. I was explaining this to my buddy Richard, that Christianity, I feel like, is like you're investing in a stock that you know is going to do well at some point. Like if someone went back in time and was like, invest in Bitcoin because you know it's going to do well, you're going to invest in Bitcoin. Well, if you invest in God and if you love Him and you learn about Him, you're investing in the kingdom of heaven. So eventually, even if you have your downs and your lows, you're gonna have a pretty good high at the end. You know what I mean? So that's kind of
That's a
how I
really,
think about it. Yeah.
yeah, that's a really
So I think,
interesting way of looking at it. Were you
yeah.
going to finish? I cut you off a little. Sorry.
No, I was just saying, sorry, there's a lot of delay between you guys and me. I don't know why my internet's being weird, but yeah.
Oh,
If I cut you off, that's why. Yeah.
well, that's a really interesting analogy because the more you invest into the kingdom of God, the more that it grows, right? There's a very
Mm-hmm.
direct correlation between how much individuals invest and how much growth there is. So obviously we know that God is behind the increase. In 1 Corinthians 3, it talks about how certain people plant seeds, other people water them, other people fertilize them. There's different actions that we as God's children take here below on the earth, and God ultimately grants the increase. But, his people still have to go out and do it. If all of his people refuse to go preach the word, God could still work. He would still have
Mm-hmm.
things to do, but the growth would be stunted, and God would not be pleased at all with his children if everybody refused to preach or everybody refused to uphold his moral system, or there's all sorts of things you can insert there. So that's a really cool way of thinking about it.
Any thoughts, Johnny? You have any thoughts about that?
I'm not really
Oh,
into
he's
the
got
big into the
plenty.
stock market, but what, Justin?
Yeah.
I said, oh, he's got plenty.
I
All I've got
know.
is thoughts, Joey. You want to talk about sitting there thinking, "Oh, bro, I forgot it was even part of the podcast." That's Justin's
Yeah.
life story.
I know. That's
Look,
funny.
it's hard because it's like as a host, like you want to set up questions, but then you also kind of want to answer them before you forget about them. So you set up this huge question that you're about to ask your co-host, but then you're like, "Let me just answer it really quick," and then it ends up being like a 10 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not
You
saying
know,
you did anything wrong. My brain wanders off a lot, so
no,
that's
no,
all.
no, no, no,
My
no,
attention
no.
span.
Joey, it's fine.
My
So
bad.
Joey, your first time ever on a podcast before, right?
Mm-hmm. I think.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Duh.
Let's see
Silly
if
goose.
Joe has any questions or thoughts. He said winter is for penguins and for polar bears. The penguin, bro. The penguin meme. Have you guys seen the
Johnny.
penguin? Dude, I am him. I am.
Bro.
That is, we got to be Christian. Christians are like the penguin, dude. Justin, you haven't seen the penguin meme? It's everywhere.
The most recent penguin video I've seen is a video of a penguin that runs off to the mountains.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. It's everywhere,
The
dude. It's
penguin
the
that goes
penguin
and
meme.
kills itself.
He
Yeah.
leaves the whole crowd just to go to the mountains. It's like that John Muir quote, which I have on my wall, which is the mountains are calling and I must go. But it's like it's just funny. Like people are like making like Christian edits now, where it's like be the like don't follow the ways of the world, but be the penguin and go towards the mountains. And let's see what questions Joe has. He's our
That's
only
funny.
listener right now, live listener. Um, He's our number one fan. I have to admit, of all the live streams I've done, he's the one who joins more than anyone. He says, "What about those of us who can't relate to winter and campfires? Can that be replaced with beach and fishing?" That's a good question. I mean, it's hard for us to speak on it when it comes to like seasons, because if you live in Florida, I mean, they get a winter, right? Like it does get cold there, but they're not getting like the snow. Um, I don't know because I haven't experienced like an entire season. I've been there for days, a few days in cold. But what else don't relate to winter? What are your thoughts, Justin and Joey? So it's kind of the same concept we're talking about, but how could you use an analogy that has more to do with the beach and fishing?
The beach and fishing are beautiful at night. If you want to go back to that, that's one thing I think about. That's actually one thing I was thinking about when we were talking about nighttime was the beach at night. I know it's kind of far back, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm sure. I don't know if you've night fished before. I sure haven't, but it looks sweet.
Yeah,
Pretty nice.
think of the
Yeah.
coldness of the water, right? Imagine like
Yeah.
winter water and how cold that is, and you not being able to go into the waters like you normally could, and the patience for summer to come around again so you can go into those. And there's patience that's involved. I mean, fishing is a literally, like me and Justin talked about 2 weeks ago, a game of fishing, right? A game of patience. Fishing is a game of patience, of waiting and waiting on the Lord. And I don't know, like from my experience of fishing in the cold, it's your hands are freezing. I don't really like to wear gloves. So your hands are usually pretty cold. I know, Justin, last time we went, your hands were like ice cold and you like could barely even tie a knot to. I brought
Yeah,
some
that
gloves,
was
but
rough.
I like to put the gloves on and then I'll take them off when I'm fishing. So I'll do like in between a certain amount of reels. But um, what was your thoughts, Justin, on Joe's question?
So the question again is, how about those of us who don't relate to winter and campfires? Can that be replaced with beach and fishing, etc.? So I would say, Jesus used parables to relate common everyday experiences to the spiritual realm. And so, yeah, you definitely can replace one thing with another as long as it has some sort of common spiritual tie-in. But there are certain topics and concepts that are kind of meant for, I don't want to be too vague, but just the idea of kind of depressing, winter, dark, that kind of style of, or I guess that kind of motif. You see it a lot in literature. Um, I think it's been a while since I read this, so I could be wrong, but Les Miserables or something, I think it was
Yeah,
called.
Les Mis.
We, yeah, Les Mis. We didn't read the whole thing, but we read certain sections of the book, and I believe there was a big section in there about winter, and it's all of these really poor French peasants, if I remember correctly, and for them it was really, really hard. And so, just the idea of winter, it's a little bit different because on the beach, I don't know. Does it snow? Does the ocean freeze over? I don't really think so, right? So
No.
it's just a little bit different. I'm sure there are some things that you could relate, but it's just a different set of images, a different intended imagery for the reader or for the listener.
Yeah. If you're living in a tropical paradise like Florida, then it's going to be hard to understand like seasons of darkness and despair and I mean for Colorado, sometimes we have like 6 months of winter is like kind of the funny saying is like we have like 6 months of winter, then we like 3 months of summer. That's like it, and then like
Yeah,
one
but if
month
you
of
live
fall.
in Jamaica or Cuba or something, you're
Yeah,
not going to have any idea of
All
what
right, you got other
you're talking
problems,
about.
bro.
Yeah.
yeah. No, but it's a good question because I mean maybe not everyone can relate to that. I mean I think you can feel the imagery of it. I mean like I can't exactly understand a lot of the parables that Christ gives when it comes to certain animals and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But no,
Even
I
then,
mean
like you were saying earlier, sorry, even then, like you were saying earlier, it's like the way we see winter now isn't even the same as it was described in the Bible. So just kind of using your imagination. That's what I have to do. I love winter. So that's why
yeah.
earlier I was saying it's more personal. I think what you were saying to you, maybe if you have those seasonal depressions, because winter makes me happy.
I wonder if fish are like if there's seasons where fish bite more, where your like harvest, I guess you could say, would be more plentiful. I don't know, like when it comes to the ocean. In Colorado, you can't really fish this time of year because the lakes are frozen. You can go ice fishing, but it's not the same, right? I mean, so it kind of depends on the type of year. I think of, let's say, like boat fishing, right? Let's say you're an actual fisherman, like a sailor. Like imagine the storms that might be happening, or the coldness of the water, or even just the wind, the ocean spray that comes off the water that's hitting you, that's like ice cold, freezing. Hypothermia is totally possible on a beach, right? Um, so I don't know. Let's see. Joe is typing a little bit more. Maybe you can educate us a little
Dude,
bit,
the
but
water was pretty cold when I just went out to Florida. Pretty bragging about their warm waters. I mean, felt good. It was cold, all right.
it is warmer than California. Let's see. Joe says winter does not seem to have negative
Winter does seem.
connotations. It's interesting that the Promised Land was not a wintry place. I believe Israel's climate is tropical, so maybe we belong in warm weather. Does seem. Yeah, yeah. I can see that perspective.
Is it?
I like
It's
the
maybe
cold though.
less tropical, more desert.
Yeah, it's more desert. I mean, it gets so hot there that it can kill you. So
Yeah, I guess
I
it
just think,
does.
sorry,
Sorry, real quick. It says
it's
it
the
does
lag.
snow in Israel, but in very specific higher elevation areas, and it's pretty rare.
yeah,
Mm.
there's mountains there. I mean, deserts sometimes will drop to like 30 degrees and lower during the nighttime.
So what he was saying, maybe we belong in warm weather. God made it so we can survive pretty much naked in warm weather. Can't survive naked in winter. So
Yeah,
there you go.
yeah.
All right, Johnny. Any other thoughts?
No, I think that was a pretty good episode as far as just the winter and the outdoors with winter. And look, Joe, I get it. You're not going to move to Colorado anytime soon, but it's a beautiful place. We'd love to have you, and we love visitors here in Colorado. And even though there is a winter, there's a lot of growth and character development that can happen in the cold and in the quietness of it all. And I love it. I've come to realize over the years, even though like for me it's difficult because I work in the cold. Like I work outside a lot of time. Like today I was working outside, and we have gas heaters that are we fill them up. Some of them are propane, some of them are diesel. We fill those puppies up. You need a little electrical source, and it looks like a cannon, like a huge cannon, and it just blows. And so like I know what it's like to work in the cold and the freezing and having to like do physical labor out there. It's not fun when you can't feel your fingers. But you kind of learn to appreciate like those I don't know, those struggles and stuff like that. Or you learn to appreciate certain things about it and look at the positive side of it. I will say and repeat one more time, the fresh air and the um breath that you like the it feels like you're inhaling oxygen 2.0. Like it's like I don't know how to explain it, but when it's cool outside and you get a just a deep breath of that mountain fresh mountain fresh air, it's just something else. I can't put it out there. It's the best air
It's
you'll ever have in your life. It's like premium air.
like crisp. That's how I always think to describe it. Nice and crisp.
Let's see. Joe says, "Is there bad weather on the new Earth of Revelations 19?" I guess you got to define bad. Because if the new Earth, if we have celestial bodies and we're living on the new Earth, or if our celestial bodies are just in heaven, maybe we aren't affected by the cold or the heat in a negative way. Maybe we can just enjoy them for what they are. I don't know. Was it ever cold in the Garden of Eden? I don't know. I,
Probably not, because they were naked. So
I
they
yeah,
don't know if
gotta.
there's any storms because there's no rain before Noah.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
I think
Yeah.
for my last thought, I think it's important to say that, you know, okay, I made it through the whole podcast without saying this, but I'm gonna say it. I just hate it when people say, "Oh, I'm in a season." Ugh, it's so cringy to
Oh
me.
yeah,
But
the Christianese.
yeah, exactly. But I will say, regardless of whatever spiritual, season that you're going through, it's not wrong to feel the emotions associated with that spiritual season, right? So, like we said earlier, with spring, it's very joyous and it's good to feel joy. It's not bad. And then I would say, at the same time, with winter, it's also not wrong for people to feel depressed. I think you mentioned this a little earlier. And the whole point of a season is that it's a temporary thing that has a start. Whoa. It's got a start and it's got an end. And so it's not going to last forever. I think it's as I have, as I gain a little bit more life experience, I realize that being human, God created humans with certain emotions, and it's totally okay to be depressed as long as your joy ultimately rests in the Lord. And that's kind of the point that I wanted to bring out when talking about how the joy of the Lord doesn't really relate to emotion. You can be depressed, you can be having a hard time, you can be going through various, very serious things in your life. And it's natural to have negative emotions when you're going through those things. You shouldn't have to put on a fake face everywhere you go and pretend that you're happy when you're really struggling. But ultimately, you should pray to the Lord, trust in Him, and seek wisdom and counsel and guidance so that you can get to the end of that tunnel, so to speak, so that you can get to the spring where the growth abounds and where you can be joyful. So that's the goal. But don't feel ashamed and don't feel sorry for being sad or depressed or whatever it is.
Gotcha. Thank you. See you later, Joe. He's saying Pozdravi.
See ya.
See ya.
Joey,
Yeah.
any last thoughts? First time on the Ambassadors podcast. Welcome.
Overrated. Just joking.
Thanks, bro.
No, thanks for having me, brate. You didn't ask me, I'm so glad to be your first sibling on the podcast, by the way.
Technically,
you have
Joshua
any other
was,
of your
but the
brothers?
episode got cut.
What? Oh, yeah. So.
Oh, I didn't watch that one.
Yeah, I didn't watch that one. But yeah, good topic. Good choice. Very fitting, especially for how stinking cold it's been lately. But
I've been loving it. My last thoughts are just I'll reread these verses. Romans chapter 5, verse 3. And not only so, but we glory in tribulations, also knowing that tribulation worketh patience, and patience experience, and experience hope. And hope maketh not ashamed, because the love of God is shed abroad in our hearts by the Holy Ghost, which is given unto us. So pray everyone is able to have the strength to be able to get through their winter seasons or rely on the Lord, that you guys would be, excited for whatever Lord has for you in your future, and have hope. I do want to say one thing kind of came out was we were emailed by a church. There's a young boy named Jacob, I think his name is, right? Jacob Weinhart. He's a toddler. He's like a little kid, and he has a brain tumor, and he's had one for years. And he had a serious surgery today where they were able to remove most of it, not all of it, but like majority of it, with no complications. So, if you guys could pray for Jacob, pray for little Jacob Weinhart, that for his health and for his recovery and for his healing, and just for the parents as they've been battling this for years now, and it's very hard, I'm sure, on them. And you just give them the strength, dear Lord, and that you'd give this little boy the health and strength, and you'd, heal him, that he could grow up to live a healthy life, dear Lord, for all of us. I went into prayer there. That, he could live a healthy life. So pray for Jacob, and thank you guys for listening. If you guys like the stuff, subscribe, share, comment. We like when you guys interact, have ideas or topics or questions about anything we've said today, or even for future topics that have to do with the outdoors and God and servanthood. Let us know. Watch our sister podcasts, the Not Normal podcast. That's my podcast where I talk more about just social, cultural, and religious things that have to do with more of today's society, and sometimes they cross over with the topics. But love you guys. We appreciate all of our listeners. And without further ado, I will see you next week.
bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Have a blessed week.